I should be on my honeymoon. I should be waking up to sunlight spilling across white sheets, the ocean breathing just beyond the balcony doors. I should be reaching for my husband in that half-asleep way that still feels new, still feels unreal because a few days ago, we stood in front of everyone and promised forever. Instead, I'm sitting alone in seat 2A of a first-class cabin, a glass of scotch resting against my palm, watching clouds drift past the window like something being erased. I've never felt more clear-headed in my life. 3 days ago, I married a man I loved. 3 days ago, I said vows I meant. 3 days ago, I believed I was starting the safest chapter of my life. Now I'm flying home alone and the marriage is already over. The cabin is quiet. Soft engine hum. Polite smiles from the flight attendants. No one here knows that I should be barefoot in a tropical resort right now, not wrapped in a cashmere blanket 30,000 feet in the air, replaying a single sentence over and over in my head. On our honeymoon, he whispered, standing at the balcony railing, eyes fixed on the water instead of on me. My ex would have gotten me the sweet. Not yelled, not meant to hurt, just stated. Like a comparison that had been running in the background for a long time and finally slipped out. I remember the way my smile didn't falter, the way my chest went oddly calm, as if something heavy had finally settled into place. I remember nodding, as if he'd pointed out a flaw in a hotel room instead of a flaw in our entire marriage. I told him I'd fix it. His face lit up immediately. Relief, approval, that satisfied certainty that I would, of course, make it right. He kissed my cheek, already reaching for his phone to check the spa schedule. While he spent the afternoon wrapped in luxury, I walked through the resort like a ghost with a plan. The front desk, the concierge, the business center. By the time his 4-hour spa package ended, champagne lunch included, my bags were gone from the room, my name was removed from the reservation, and a one-way first-class ticket home was boarding. I turned my phone to silent somewhere between the security line and the lounge. The voicemails started arriving over open water. Confusion first, then anger, then fear. By the time he realized he was alone in a 5-star resort with a massive bill under his name, I was already airborne, sipping scotch and staring at the sky, feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. I should be devastated. I should be heartbroken. I should be wondering how everything fell apart so fast. Instead, I feel relieved. Because 3 days into a marriage, I saw my future with perfect clarity, and I chose not to live it. I didn't rush into marriage. That's the part people always get wrong when they hear how quickly it ended. They assume impulse, naivety, a woman swept up by a wedding and a promise. But I'm not impulsive. I never have been. I'm an architect. Structure is how I understand the world. Load-bearing walls, stress points, what holds and what fails when pressure is applied. I don't believe in shortcuts. I believe in foundations. That's why I thought he was right for me. We met 2 years ago at a fundraiser, one of those polished networking events where everyone pretends they're relaxed while secretly calculating who's worth talking to. He stood out because he wasn't trying. No performative confidence, no sales pitch. He asked real questions. He listened. When I mentioned my work, he didn't glaze over or steer the conversation back to himself. He wanted to understand how things fit together. I liked that. He worked in a fast-paced industry, high income, high status, the kind of job people drop into conversation on purpose. But with me, he didn't lead with it. He talked about travel, about food, about how he hated wasting time on things that didn't matter. At the beginning, he made me feel chosen. Not chased, chosen. We dated slowly. Weeknight dinners, long walks, lazy Sundays that felt earned. He admired my discipline, my independence, the fact that I didn't need him to rescue me from anything. When he talked about his past relationships, he was careful, distant. There was one ex he mentioned more than the others, always framed as history, as something resolved. I'm completely over that, he said once, casually, like it was an administrative detail. That chapter is closed. I believed him. When he proposed, it wasn't dramatic. No crowd, no kneeling in public. Just the two of us, sitting on my balcony after dinner, city lights blinking below like a quiet audience. He took my hand, steady, confident. I don't want chaos, he said. I want a life that works, with you. It felt aligned, logical, right. Planning the wedding was intense but manageable. I handled logistics. He handled aesthetics. Or at least, he had opinions about aesthetics. Hotels, venues, experiences, Words like worth it and standard and taste started showing up more often. I noticed, but I didn't worry. Everyone has quirks under stress, I told myself. Weddings bring out strange priorities. I assumed it would settle once we were past the ceremony. The honeymoon was my idea. 10 days at an ultra-luxury, all-inclusive resort. Oceanfront room, private balcony, massive soaking tub. Not the most expensive option, but a stunning one. I saved for a year to make it happen. I wanted it to feel intentional, not excessive. I was proud when we arrived. The first day he was quiet, not unhappy, just subdued. He took photos, then deleted them. He stared at the resort map like he was looking for something missing. The lighting isn't great, he muttered at dinner. I laughed it off. The second day, the sighs started. Small, controlled, the kind that aren't meant to be confrontational, but absolutely are. By the third night, I could feel it. The imbalance I hadn't named yet. The way he was measuring something invisible. The way my effort was being evaluated instead of appreciated. I didn't know then that the comparison had already been made. That my marriage wasn't being weighed against expectation, but against someone else's standard. Looking back, the signs were never loud. That's what makes them dangerous. They slipped in quietly, disguised as preferences, as taste, as harmless observations that didn't seem worth arguing over, especially not during what was supposed to be the happiest stretch of our lives. Before the wedding, I noticed it in small ways. How he'd pause a beat too long when we talked about hotels, then say things like, "I just think experiences matter more than stuff," while scrolling through photos of resorts he'd never stayed at. How he'd mention friends who did it right without ever explaining what right actually meant. Sometimes when we were out with people, I'd catch it in his tone. A quick comparison, a subtle correction, a raised eyebrow when something didn't meet an unspoken standard. "You're very practical," he'd say, half smiling. "That's one of the things I love about you." It sounded like a compliment. It wasn't until later that I realized it always came paired with something else, something implied. Practical, but not indulgent. Smart, but not flashy. Reliable, but not impressive. The X came up more often than I was comfortable with, though always indirectly. Never emotional, never nostalgic. Just referenced. She used to work insane hours. She always went all out on trips. She had this way of noticing details. Each comment floated by on its own, light enough to ignore. But together, they formed a shape I didn't want to see. I told myself I was being sensitive. I told myself I was projecting stress onto normal relationship noise. We were weeks away from the wedding. Of course, everything felt heightened. The honeymoon was supposed to reset us. Instead, it sharpened everything. At the resort, his dissatisfaction became harder to miss. He wasn't openly rude. He was controlled, polite, almost detached. The kind of disappointment that doesn't demand anything, but still expects to be fixed. When the waiter brought the wrong wine, he smiled and waved it off, then leaned in and whispered, "It's fine, just not what I would have chosen." When we passed the overwater bungalows, his gaze lingered. "They're beautiful," he said quietly. "Very exclusive." I felt something tighten in my chest. "I thought you loved the room," I said lightly. "It's nice," he replied. That word again. Nice. "I just think for a honeymoon you only get one chance to do it properly." Properly. That night, as I unpacked my suitcase, I noticed he hadn't unpacked his at all. His clothes stayed folded, untouched, like he wasn't planning to settle in. I asked him about it. "I'll do it later," he said, distracted. "I just want to relax." But he didn't relax. He paced. He checked his phone. He stared out at the ocean like he was looking past it, through it, toward something else. I remember standing behind him on the balcony, the air warm against my skin, the sound of waves steady and forgiving, and thinking, why does it feel like I'm already disappointing my husband? I didn't know then that the disappointment wasn't about the resort. It was about comparison. And by the time he finally said her name, casually, carelessly, like it didn't matter, the seed had already taken root. The realization didn't explode. It crept in. And once it did, there was no pulling it out without tearing everything else apart. The night everything finally broke didn't look dramatic. No shouting, no slammed doors, no storm rolling in on cue. It was quiet, beautiful even. The sun was lowering itself into the ocean like it had all the time in the world, turning the water molten gold. The kind of view people post online with captions about gratitude and perfection. The kind of moment you're supposed to remember forever. I decided, very deliberately, that I would fix it. Not us, the mood. I ordered an expensive bottle of champagne to the room. the kind I'd normally save for a milestone. I asked for fresh glasses, chilled just right. I wanted the evening to feel intentional, thoughtful, like proof that I was paying attention. When the bottle arrived, I poured 2 glasses slowly, watching the bubbles rise, hearing the soft hiss as the cork settled back into place. I stepped out onto the balcony, the warm air brushing against my arms. "This is nice," he said from behind me. I smiled. "Nice?" I laughed softly. "This is paradise. Look at that view." He sighed. Not a frustrated sigh, not an angry one. That deep, weary sigh, the kind that carries disappointment without naming it, the kind that says you should already know. "It's just," he began, leaning on the railing beside me, eyes fixed on the horizon instead of on my face. I was talking to her before we left. I didn't move. I didn't stop pouring. "Her?" I asked, keeping my voice even. "Lena," he said. Casual, like the name didn't carry weight. "You know, my ex." My hand stilled. Champagne fizzed up over the rim and spilled onto my fingers, cold and sticky. I set the bottle down carefully, too carefully. "What about her?" I asked. He shrugged, still not looking at me. "She was just saying. When she takes couples to the islands, she always books the overwater bungalow. Full suite, private plunge pool. She says anything less feels a little tacky." Tacky. The word hung between us, heavy and absurd against the sound of waves. I stared at him. "Tacky," I repeated. "Those were her words," he said quickly, turning to me then, reading my expression. "Not mine." But his face betrayed him. There was no disagreement there, no discomfort, just agreement he hadn't bothered to hide. "She has good taste," he added. "She always has, and she knows what I'm worth." He hesitated, then said it anyway. "She would have gotten me the suite." And there it was. Not an accident, not a slip. A verdict. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I didn't remind him of the savings, the planning, the intention behind every choice I'd made. Because suddenly, with terrifying clarity, I could see the future. A lifetime of being compared. A lifetime of being measured. A lifetime of never quite being enough. I smiled. Not a real smile. A professional one. The kind you give when a decision has already been made. "You're right," I said calmly. "This isn't good enough for you." His eyes widened. Hope flickered instantly. "It's tacky," I continued, nodding toward the room. "I should fix that." His face lit up, the tension evaporating like it had never been there. "Really?" he said, grinning. "I knew you'd understand." "I always do," I replied. He kissed my cheek, already turning away. "I have a spa appointment anyway. That bridal glow package you booked? I'll go enjoy that while you handle it." "Of course," I said softly. "Enjoy." He left the room almost bouncing, the disappointment gone, replaced by satisfaction. I stood there alone for a moment, the ocean still glowing, the champagne untouched. Then I picked up the phone, and I got to work. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Not a slam, not a final sound. Just a polite, ordinary noise, like everything else about this marriage had been. Quiet expectations, quiet disappointments, quiet comparisons. My hands weren't shaking. That surprised me. I'd always assumed that if something like this happened, if my marriage cracked open this early, I'd feel it in my body first. Instead, there was a strange stillness, like the moment after a building inspection when you already know the structure won't pass, and all that's left is documentation. I took a slow breath, then another. This wasn't about the room, it never had been. It was about what he had revealed without realizing it, that he was still orienting himself around someone else's standards. Not we, not us. Me. I walked inside and set the champagne glasses down untouched. The bubbles were already flattening, the moment dissolving on its own. I picked up my phone. First, the spa. "Hi," I said calmly when they answered. "I'd like to upgrade my husband's appointment." "Yes, the ultimate indulgence package. The 4-hour one. Add the champagne lunch, please. It's a surprise." I gave the room number, authorized the charges. That would keep him occupied. Next, the concierge. "I need to make some travel adjustments," I said. "My husband is enjoying the spa, and I'll be leaving early." There was a pause. Confusion. "You're checking out?" the woman asked carefully. "Yes," I said, "I am. He's staying." Then the front desk. "I'd like to settle my portion of the bill now," I explained. "My husband's card is on file for the room. Please remove my name from the reservation." It was true. He'd insisted on putting the hotel on his rewards card. Wanted the points, the status. I'd covered the flights, the excursions, the wedding costs he'd asked me to handle. At the time, it felt like teamwork. Now it felt like clarity. "Of course," the clerk said. "All charges from this point forward will go to him." "Yes," I replied, including the spa services. I didn't smile. I used the business center to book my flight. One way. First class. Leaving in 2 hours. As the confirmation email hit my inbox, my chest finally tightened. Not with panic, but with gravity. This was real now. No dramatic confrontation, no speech rehearsed in the mirror. Just a sequence of choices I was making calmly, deliberately, with my eyes open. I texted no one. I packed my suitcase methodically, folded clothes, checked drawers, left nothing behind that I'd regret later. When I zipped the bag closed, it felt less like leaving a honeymoon and more like leaving a job that had quietly become unsustainable. At the airport lounge, I ordered a scotch. The glass was cold in my hand, the burn steady, familiar. My phone buzzed. Once, twice. I flipped it face down without checking, because whatever he was feeling now, confusion, irritation, entitlement, it wasn't mine to manage anymore. For the first time since the wedding, my heart started to race. Not with fear, but with something sharper. Resolve. I wasn't running. I was choosing. And I knew, with unsettling certainty, that when he finally understood what I'd done, the silence I felt now would be replaced by noise. A lot of it. The first voicemail came before we even left the ground. I didn't listen to it right away. By the time the plane leveled off, there were 4 missed calls. I ordered another drink. That was when I listened. "Hey, where are you?" His voice was confused, not alarmed yet. "I just got back from the spa, and you're not in the room. Your bags are gone. This isn't funny." The second voicemail came 10 minutes later. "I'm at the front desk. They're saying you checked out, that you flew home. Are you serious right now?" By the third voicemail, panic crept in. "My card is being declined. They put a huge hold on it. They're saying I have to pay before I can stay another night. Call me back." The fourth voicemail came half an hour later. "Please," he said. "Please just answer. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. Lena doesn't matter. I was stupid." His breathing was uneven. "They're talking about calling the authorities if I can't settle the bill. Please, you can't just leave me here." I let the message end on its own. I didn't feel satisfaction. What I felt was confirmation. Because only now, when the luxury vanished, when the safety net disappeared, did the apology arrive. Only after consequence. I didn't respond. When I landed, it was late. I took a car home. My condo, my property, purchased years before I ever met him, welcomed me with silence. I printed the annulment papers my lawyer emailed while I was in transit and laid them neatly on the kitchen counter. Then I called a locksmith. New locks, new deadbolts, new garage code. I went to bed alone in my own home. And for the first time since the wedding, I slept. Morning came without ceremony. No dramatic awakening, no sobbing into pillows, just pale light sliding across the floor. This was the aftermath. Not the logistics, I'd handled those. Not the confrontation, I'd chosen silence. But the wait. 3 days. That was all it took for a marriage to end. I thought about the wedding again. Not the vows, but the faces. His parents smiling proudly. His mother squeezing my hands and saying, "Welcome to the family." I wondered how the story was already being told without me. She left him. She overreacted. The narrative always rushes in to fill silence. When his mother finally called, I didn't answer. When the voicemail arrived, I listened. "How could you do this to him?" she demanded. "You embarrassed him. You embarrassed our family." I sat at the table, phone in my hand. This was the dark part. The moment when everyone else closes ranks. My lawyer called later that day. "I filed the annulment," he said. "Fraud. False pretenses. It's solid." After that, the noise faded. The messages dried up. The annulment was granted. Legally, the marriage never existed. 3 days erased on paper. But the lesson stayed. I learned that love doesn't ask you to compete with someone who isn't in the room. That commitment doesn't come with silent scorecards. And that the moment someone tells you, plainly, casually, that someone else understands their worth better than you do, they've already stepped out of the relationship. I didn't walk away angry. I walked away awake. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is leave before the story turns into something you no longer recognize.